Hey, what's up guys, it's the Uchiha here, back with another part of What If Naruto Love Found in Desert. And before continuing this series, I want to tell you guys that I have already uploaded What If Naruto was in its next part. If you haven't checked that out, please check that out as well. And if you haven't, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel as well. If you haven't, that is, without further ado, let's continue my story. Suddenly becoming aware that you were very much existed was something Gaara had only done once before. The first time was when she first discovered the effect Naruto had on her, and now for the second time, Gaara was aware that she existed. Her hands felt heavy. She eyed it curiously. At least she had hands. That was better than not. She looked around, nothing the white void she was surrounded by. She saw herself alone, so very lonely. It was feeling beyond crushing. She was going to be eternally and alone forever. Her right hand moved to her face. Tears. How long had it been since she cried? Had she ever? She felt the cold tears streaming unstopped down her face to her lips. They were salty and bitter. She looked hopelessly to the void. Naruto, was he alright? What was he doing right now? Where was he? Just when she had finally made a connection, it was cruelly ripped from her hands. Was it fate? Was this destiny? Gaara-chan! A voice shocked her reality. The void she felt slowly dissipating. Her nightmare of being alone shifted to a dream. She felt a familiar calmness set in around her, a hopeful gaze spotted on her face. Feeling a hand on her shoulder, she sighed in liberation. She knew who it was, but she wouldn't smile until she saw his smile. Gaara turned to face him, noting his blonde hair and grin. He had grown, even more handsome, taller. She smiled at him. Gaara-chan. Naruto spoke her name with happiness. Naruto was seen beside her, sitting on the void. He was with her. That was what mattered. They didn't care where they were, even if they were within the traps of death. They were together. That was what counted. To Naruto, that was the one thing besides her that existed. He stood up, removing his hand from her shoulder. She stared at him in awe, looking at his hand, offered to her like a child. She took it. Gaara-chan. She heard Naruto say with his voice, sounding clearer despite the rings in her ears. Gaara's eyes shot open and was blinded by the bright blue sky, but she kept looking at them openly. Her mouth pulled into a smile, all on its own. She blinked once, letting her eyes adjust as she stared at Naruto Uzumaki. She could feel his hand at her back, holding her up with his other gripped her hand. It was close enough to a hug. He was smiling at her now, his hands gripping hers. The touch said everything. Sorry for not being there. Sorry for leaving you. Sorry for letting you die. Gaara chose then and there to act on the promise she'd been keeping to herself for years now. Her hands free, the one on the outside of their two bodies found itself behind Naruto's neck. She wasn't quite strong enough to pull herself all the way up to him, nor was she strong enough to bring him down to her. So they met in the middle. The greatest sense of existence that Gaara ever felt rushed through her. This wasn't the cute, naive kiss of innocence. This was the passion-filled kiss of youth. Their lips were hard and chapped, prickling against one another, but they were also soft, oh so perfect. The world fell away from them. She was no longer Kazekage. He was no longer a ninja of a different village. There was no Akatsuki, and there wasn't ninja. She was Gaara, and he was Naruto, and they were together, closed out to the world. The kiss became a promise of more, a promise of so much more than any words could hope to describe. To Gaara, it was a reminder that what she felt from Naruto wasn't just her clinging to the first person to make her feel. It was real. To Naruto, it was a confirmation that all this was over. After Akatsuki was dealt with, after Sasuke was back in Konoha, that he could have real happiness. Their hopes and dreams were poured into that kiss. Slowly Gaara pulled away, rather contented with her first kiss. She rather liked the completely stupefied look on his face. His half-lidded eyes blinked once, twice to regain his composure before the stupid grin broke onto his face again. Slowly Gaara pulled away, rather content with her first kiss. She rather liked the completely stupefied look on his face. His half-lidded eyes blinked once, twice to regain his composure before that stupid grin broke onto his face. I know I repeated this paragraph again, but I kind of forgot where I was. So anyways, on with our story. Wow, that was all he could say. All he needed to say right then. Everything else was said in that kiss. Yeah, wow. Gaara said, smiling back at him. Ahem. That was the sound to get their attention, the sound that made them both realize that they weren't the only ones around. It came from Tamari, clearing her throat. The eldest of their sand sibling was standing before them, an incredibly amused smile on her face. Behind her was the shinobi of the sand, looking with gaping mouths at their Kazekage. Well, shit, Kankuro could make out. Gaara's face turned a bright red, a deeper red than anyone and anybody save Naruto had ever seen her turn into. She sucked in her upper lip, looking at Ninja before her. They were crying. They were celebrating because she was alive. They were her ninja. They came to try and save her, and they were rewarded by a show of her kissing some leaf shinobi. They all came to try and help you, Gaara, Tamari said, taking the final few steps towards Gaara and Naruto. Tamari extended her hand towards her prone sister. A look of pride and relief on her face. Gaara took the hand, allowing Tamari to pull her up and out of Naruto's grip. She stood for a second. Naruto didn't let her fall. Her legs were steady, and she found herself using his shoulder to stand upright. Who knew coming back to life would be so tiring? Thank you, Naruto. Gaara allowed herself to lean on him just a bit more than she needed to. A small, innocent enough gesture. The realization that they honored grandmother Chio's life was given so that Gaara could live had saddened her, but when Sakura told her what Chio's last words were, Gaara couldn't help but smile. She would make sure the dream came true. Chio's words filtered through. This is for the world of peace that you and Gaara can make with love, instead of the world of hatred my generations left with you. One look at Naruto, the boy turned man that had dragged her out of the darkness into the light, and Gaara knew that if anybody could do it, it would be Naruto. He had the undeniable presence that would make the impossible possible. He was really taller now. It only bothered Gaara slightly, as it would be much more difficult to kiss when they were both standing. She had to climb him ever so slightly, or drag him down to her level, neither of which would be too hard. She slightly annoyed Gaara cried as Kazekage forced her to walk. She couldn't run at high speeds right now. Her body was simply drained, considering she was dead just a few hours ago. She would say she was doing fine. She kept wandering to and away from Naruto. He kept making her knees weak when he smiled at her, and she kept feeling the temptation to curl up and fall asleep. No one will think any less of you. Tamari's voice shocked Gaara out of her half-asleep stupor. Gaara looked at her smiling sister. There was a bit of mirth in her eyes, but there was also happiness behind Tamari's. Was Mitsuri making obscene gesture with her hands while pointing at Naruto? Gaara had no idea that you could act out an entire scene from Uchiha with just your hands. Several other ninjas were also smiling at her. Yes, there was a mirth. Yes, there was going to tease her. But in each of their eyes were admiration and companionship. Gaara was voicely wondering if every ninja in Konoha and Suna was trying to get her and Naruto together. Gaara sighed in defeat and guided herself closer to the blonde ninja. He had saved her twice now. She needed to return that favor in her own way. Gaara's way. He smiled as she drew near to him. It was fortunate that it was so easy for her to make him smile. She tugged on his sleeve. Naruto. Gaara began, her eyes already dropping. I'm tired, she said, voicely aware of the fact that Naruto had swept her off her feet and was holding her bridal style. Her head lolled as she began to fall asleep. She saw Matsuri and Sakura giving her a subtle thumbs up. She heard Rockery shout about youth. Rest up, Gaara-chan. We'll get you home soon, Naruto said, smiling down at her. For once, Gaara was quite happy with how small she was. She wouldn't be such a burden to Naruto, and he'd be able to carry her for a while. It was relieving. Thank you. And just like that, Gaara was asleep in Naruto's arms once again. It only took him 3 years. Big jerk, that is. Anytime, Kara-chan. Naruto smiled down at the sleeping redhead in his arms. She had become cuter. It seemed like some redhead's sand chipmunk. She was different and yet the same. There was less shyness in what she did, less innocent curiosity, especially if he thought about that kiss. That kiss was something Naruto wanted to do over and over and over and over and over again. Naruto's mind drifted to the scrolls in his bag. He kept a few of his favorites from Gaara, including the one that threatened his immediate death should he not come visit her if it was rather sweet, in a mysterious psycho kind of way. If you're hurt her, I'll kick your ass, Kankuro said as he walked within shoulder bumping distance of Naruto. Naruto had been wondering when Kankuro was going to finally speak his mind. He nearly made it scot free without having to deal with him. He had nothing against Kankuro, he just knew what was coming. It was a rare bit of foresight on Naruto's part, but he was quite good at seeing patterns eventually. You're fifth on the list, Naruto replied rather dryly. He shrugged, not like they could kill him. He was Uzumaki freaking Naruto. He thought smugly. Fifth? Kankuro asked. He was actually angry at Naruto by any means. He was just doing it because it was kind of a big brother's thing to do, right? And if he reads the situation right, he'd never be able to intimidate one of her sister's boyfriends. If he didn't at least try it with Naruto. It was actually rather thankful for Naruto the boy gave him his little sister. Yeah, first is Gaara-chan. The sleeping redhead shifted in his arms slightly at her name, clutching his shoulder slightly tighter. Next, I guess, is Tamari, then Sakura-chan, then Granny, and then there's you. After you is that Matsuri lady. Said Brunette gave Kankuro a thumbs up before returning to conversing with Sakura. How am I the fifth? The ordering of the list confused him greatly. Scariest person first, Naruto said, laughing sadly. Why were all the women in his life utterly terrifying ninjas? The pink-haired girl is scarier than me? And your grandma? Kankuro was at least kind of grateful he was scarier than Matsuri. Girl had learned from Gaara's shore, but she lacked any sense of intimidation. Naruto stopped midway and turned to Kankuro, who gained a slight shiver at the look from Naruto. She punched the ground, and it wasn't ground anymore, Naruto said, facing Kankuro with a disturbing look on his face. She has monstrous strength now. She got it from Granny. Naruto. Gaara's tired voice echoed from his arms. Shut up. Naruto did as he was told and immediately sucked up his bottom lip. You are so whipped. Kankuro laughed, whispered. He got about one good chuckle out before he was a single glaring green eye of his sister shot at him. Kankuro. Gaara's head slightly more awake now. Shut up, or I'll kill you. Naruto snorted. Gaara immediately backed away, wondering why he got to that threat while watching Gaara wrap her arms around Naruto's neck and shifted into a more comfortable position. Gaara gave Naruto a short kissing on the cheek before snuggling into his shoulder. The answer was simple. Gaara was also whipped. Naruto glared at the slowly rising of Tsunamin's gate. It was moving. He thought at first that it was the desert playing a trick on him, a mirage, but then as he grew closer, he saw them. Nearly every citizen of Suna was out on their walls, coming to greet them, to greet their Kazekage, Gaara. Naruto felt a bit of pride in Gaara for them. He jolted her in his arms, waking her from her partial slumber. She immediately glared at him. Wake up, Gaara-chan, he said happily. Your village is here to greet you. Gaara turned her face away from him and he could hear her tense as she saw her village practically run towards her. Gaara struggled to get down for a moment until Naruto moved to lower her to the ground as well. She didn't trust her own legs. A softer grip remained on Naruto's shoulder to keep her steady. She wasn't afraid that her village knew of her relationship. She was fairly certain that already did, thanks to Tamari, Matsuri, and the elders. She watched in amazement as her villagers all crowded around them, excited to see her, their Kazekage, that former mysterious demon. If she had never met Naruto, she would still be that demon. Her heart swelled as she looked at them, all with smiles on their faces. Naruto Uzumaki. Baki began sternly. She had never seen the man smile, but he wasn't frowning, and that was perhaps the closest he would get to smiling. Thank you. But I didn't do anything, really, Naruto said, modestly, completing confused by the sudden gratitude. Gaara just looked at Naruto. He really didn't know what he'd done. No idea how many people had affected by him. It was all thanks to that mysterious gift he had, that mysterious power that made everyone he meets wants to believe in him. That was how Naruto would bring about the world of peace Chiho had mentioned, and Gaara would be there when she could. Link break. Gaara frowned deepened, glaring at Naruto. This was a soul-crushing amount of disappointment. She had been so looking forward to actually spending time with him, to actually be able to see what changed in him so much, to kiss him again and again and again, to have another date with him, to have a dozen stupid conversations that were completely meaningless yet and burned into her more easily than her village history. She wanted to lay down with him in the new soft bed she bought weeks ago in anticipation for his return. She knew she was being irrational. It made sense. Akatsuki was beginning their operations. The Leaf was a likely target. They would need Naruto more than she needed him. Gaara stood up sharply yet slowly, still not quite ready for quick movements. She grabbed two objects from her desk. Gaara-chan, Naruto asked her as her gaze settled on him. I know you're tired, and I would really like to stay here, but he stopped as Gaara reached out to his back strap and began tugging on it. But this is the best chance for you to find the Uchiha, right? Gaara knew the answer was yes. She knew how important retrieving Sasuke was to him. She didn't like knowing that he likely couldn't choose between herself and Sasuke. She doubted that she could choose between Naruto and her own siblings. And most of all, she knew she could wait. This, Gaara said, holding up a small badge-like emblem. It was in the shape of a solid cord, much like the one Gaara carried. This is a symbol of what you have done for this village. We'll enter Suna at any time, for any reason. She spoke hopefully. The older shinobi in the room had their eyes widened at that. Unlimited access to another ninja was unheard of. Even when the Whirlpool village was still up, their ninja were still slightly monitored. When they came to Konoha, Naruto found himself spun around as Gaara placed the badge in his bag. I'm taking another shirt. Your old one is old. Her tone was one of no nonsense. Naruto could hear the implied and it's too small as well. He wisely wondered if she still wore his old shirt to bed. That was an image that was never burned into his mind. Foreverly. He looked forward to seeing Gaara in his shirt once again. Sure thing, Gaara-chan, Naruto said, helplessly, a little bit turned on. Oh, that reminds me. Front left pocket, there's something for you. Gaara had obtained one of Naruto's shirt and unfolded crinkled one. The more it smelled like him, the better. She blinked at Naruto. Of course he would be one of those gift-giving freaks from Konoha. Hell, he was probably why they were so generous. Gaara opened the pocket. It was a book. It looked slightly worn out, like somebody had tried to read through it as quickly as possible, but it was new, and Gaara knew exactly what it was. She couldn't be seen with that book in her office, not in front of Baki. It was bad enough Temari and Matsuri knew, but she wanted it badly. Taking Naruto's shirt, she wrapped the book up in a small, neat bundle. Now the book was going to smell like him too. Gaara wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Kakashi simply looked at her like she had a kicked puppy by her side. And besides, Naruto began happily. You shouldn't need me to sleep anymore now that you don't have Shikaku, right? A pin could be heard dropping. Naruto watched as Gaara's face shifted from one of embarrassed delight at her gift to one of anger. Temari's eyes widened. We should get going to Chiho-sama's grave, Temari said quickly. Gaara nodded and followed behind her sister. The other ninjas began to follow as well. Idiot, Sakura said, punching Naruto in the arm before. Was it something I said? Naruto asked confusedly. He looked at Kankuro, who just shook his head. Naruto was the one that upset Gaara. Therefore, it was Naruto's problem. It felt good. Link break. They saw them out of the village. Gaara wasn't good with long goodbyes, but at the same time she didn't know when Naruto would return again. I guess I should shake your hand or something, but I'm not really good at those things, so I just leave it there. Naruto began stammering, looking away from Gaara's eyes and blushing in embarrassment. Gaara blinked as she had been glaring at Naruto for a while now. She stepped forward with a sigh, her eyes softening as she did so. No handshake, Gaara said, simply as she wrapped her arms around Naruto. Those with keen eyes noticed her place something in his pocket. Naruto didn't notice the shock that Gaara was hugging him. He really shouldn't have been. Just come back to me, Gaara said whispering into his ear, "I missed you." Those three words made Naruto realize his mistake earlier. He made it sound like Gaara was just using him for sleep. He was such a dunce. "You bet," Naruto said happily as he pulled Gaara back slightly, just enough for the briefest of kisses. Any shorter and it wouldn't exist. Any longer and he wouldn't be able to leave her again. Link break. "Naruto," Sakura asked, noticing something in Naruto's pocket. "What is that in your pocket?" Curiosity had gotten the better of Sakura. She had seen Gaara place the object in there and had waited for Naruto to pull it out and examine it. "Huh, what?" Naruto was digging into his jacket pocket. He found a small bracelet. It was a string of small round glass shapes. Each one had finer made symbol of leaf and sand village. It danced when the wind hit it, sparkling into a dozen smaller rainbows. There was a small note with it as well. "I had considered simply giving you a pair of my underwear. It worked in one of the books I read, but I wanted to give you something I made with my own hands. Something you could wear all the time, Gaara." Naruto smiled as he put the bracelet on, placing the note in a safe place. "It's a gift from Gaara-chan," Naruto proclaimed happily, a little bit bummed on the underwear part, but this would do till he returned to her, to his love. As this is where I'm going to be leaving this part of, guys. I hope you like this one, and if you do, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. And this is Apollo Uchiha, and I'm signing out. Peace.